So, folks, thanks for showing up. I see lots of friends, some old friends and some new friends. We have 23 participants here, which is enough to start with. I'm sure we can generate some heat and light, maybe, with the 23. So, for those of you who don't know, I'm Garrett Gillette. I'm the founder and leader of the Southern Michigan chapter now. I want to call it the Detroit chapter, but we have absorbed the West Michigan and Southeast Michigan chapters because they were dormant for years. And I guess I get to host these because I'm the one who came up with the idea a few years ago, but I'm grateful for the participation. I saw Dan Evans, our new SABR president, of course, and former longtime Major League executive, um, in Dallas. And he told me that the one AL Central meeting he sat in on, which was the next to last one. I think it was the preseason one.
Mhm.
He was really impressed with the level and tone of the content and the discussion. I thought coming from a former Major League GM and a guy who's been around the game for 40 years on the inside, where most of us are on the outside, that's pretty high praise. So I'll take it. Um, Anyway, so the format for those again who are new is we give each chapter a chance to have a spokesperson talk about their team situation. The allocated time here is 5 minutes each, so what we want to get at about the half-hour mark into an open Q&A. At that point, people can speak up and ask questions. So far, we've never had to mute anyone, although I did tell our chapter leaders this time if they ran more than 5 minutes to 30 seconds, I would mute them. Because last time, I just want to get to the Q&A first, and 5 minutes is enough time to say something significant. So, uh, so anyway, I will start off with some comments about the recent All-Star game, which I did not know until the day of the game what would happen in lieu of a tie. I was not aware that it would there was some delay after the ninth. I'm thinking, how long does it take to send the guys up to the plate you already determined and get the batting practice pitcher out there? They must have 40 grounds crew members there, get a screen in front of them, get some artificial turf there to protect the precious grass, and start whacking away. I think it must have been a half-hour delay before they started the swing off, as they call it. I prefer to think of it as a home run derby. Did anyone time it or see how long the time was?
No.
Yeah.
I don't know. It didn't seem that long to me,
No,
but it wasn't.
Yeah, well, maybe I would just antsy. To me, I think it's a terrible idea. Although I predicted when they first came up with zombie runners, I predicted that sooner or later we would have a essentially a penalty shootout, a home run derby with two or three players
Mhm.
after the 10th. Because once you get used to games ending in 10 and ending quickly, some game will go 12 or 13 and it will just break people's, patience, and we'll end up with this after the 10th inning, and then some year later we'll end up after the ninth inning. And I think that's terrible. As an evidence of how terrible the idea is, Major League Baseball agreed that the game is officially a tie. That goes in the record books officially as a tie, but the official press release for the game said the National League won.
Mhm.
So when you can't even, your press release can't even acknowledge what you say the official record is, you're embarrassed.
Juan
So,
Marichal and Warren Spahn are rolling over in their graves.
yeah.
What
Yeah.
happened to Juan Marichal?
Well, they pitched a 16-inning game that
No,
I
I
think
he's not
with
dead,
a
I don't think.
legacy we will never be able to enjoy again.
Well, Vince's point, Larry, is that Juan is still with us.
Oh my God, you're right.
Unless
Well,
something happened in the last 20 minutes.
if they had passed, they would be rolling over. No, I know nothing that you don't know.
So, okay. So I'm going to start off with a little soliloquy on the Tigers, which is real easy. Tigers have the best record going into the break. They have the biggest division lead. They're a virtual lock for winning the division, which surprises me because I thought the Guardians were going to give them some stiff competition.
We'll talk
and,
about that.
and they still may. I mean, it would take a monumental collapse for the Tigers not to win the division, but if you want to think that's not possible, I guess you should talk to the Twins from last year or talk to the ghosts of the 51 Dodgers, right? It is possible, not likely. And then that means the Tigers will almost certainly get a bye. And if they get a bye, I like their chances of getting into the World Series. I don't think they're a favorite to win it, but I like their chances of getting into it because, people say the postseason's a crapshoot. It's not quite. You're still better off if you're a 100-win team beating an 85-win team, but it's not too far from 50-50. So not having to play one series, not risking injury, and having Tarek Skubal ready to go in the division series game one is surely an advantage. And I think that will happen. But their odds are still against them winning. Anyway, as you probably all know, because the Tigers have gotten beaucoup coverage this year, most things are going right for the Tigers, and they have managed to overcome their problems. Now in Detroit, people are pissing and moaning and threatening to jump from tall buildings because the bullpen has collapsed and because Tarek Skubal lost a game and didn't pitch well in the All-Star break. And they forget that both the 68 and 84 teams had rough patches being playing basically 500 or a little bit better ball. I think it was the 84 team that had a 16-12 record in August, which is certainly not world beating, but when you pile up a big lead, you can afford to coast. Um, Javier Baez is coming back off the scrap heap was truly a wonder. I still don't think he deserved to be in the All-Star or deserved to start the All-Star game, but I mean the story is such a great story and good for him because he was a trooper when he was miserable and people were calling for his head. He was a trooper. And Riley Green is a budding superstar. They can get by without Parker Meadows as much as he was terrific in the last half last year. They can get by without him. They have the depth. Kerry Carpenter has had a few issues, but he's still a huge threat. Although I really disliked the start of the season, people calling him Kerry Bonds. I felt that's a little bit premature, like maybe 10 seasons premature. Um, and Torkelson's resurgence was expertly managed by the Tigers, a guy who was essentially not coachable and would not listen to stuff when he was floundering. Apparently, by giving away his job to Colt Keith, shocked him into paying attention, and he went and did the work and came back, and good for him. Dylan Dingler, I never thought would be a good major league record catcher, regular. It's turned out to be a good one this year, and if that's the only good season he has as a starting catcher, it'll be worth it. They have depth. They have lots of talent in the minors. In the past, their minor league system was top heavy. They would have 2 or 3 or 4 premium prospects and not a lot below that. Or they would have a lot of prospects in the low minors, which of course many fall by the wayside. And now they have both premium prospects and depth in their minor league system. And then I think that Scott Harris, AJ Hinch, and Chris Fetter are drop dead stone cold geniuses. And I think they are absolutely brilliant. And I don't like the pitching chaos phrase because in fact it's not chaos. It is carefully planned. I think that they can surmount the injuries and the deterioration of the bullpen. They have lots of talent in the minors and they can make trades. They have lots of talent to deal at the deadline to bolster the bullpen of the starting rotation. So I am very optimistic. At the start of the season, I wrote a piece for the Detroit Metro Times saying 20 reasons why Tigers fans should remain optimistic in 2025. And now I may do a piece tomorrow. I may not have time, which would be 20 more reasons to not panic and to just assume that you're going to go deep into the playoffs. So that's my spiel, and I'm sticking to it. And let me check the waiting room. So we have up next. Who is up next? Who's who is in second place? I forgot now. Is it the
Oh, come
Royals?
on. You sounded very old. Hey.
It's basically a three-way tie, but it's the Twins by half a game
Oh,
right
it's
now.
Twins. Okay, I
Technically,
wasn't
it's
sure.
So you really
I
forgot about the rest of the division already,
I
Gary?
didn't forget about them. I just forget. I know there was a bunch up of also rans, and you know, but I mean, look, after 10 years, after 10 years in the wilderness, 10 really brutal years, we can be forgiven a little hubris, a little. Um, so anyway, John, you want to go?
Sure. Minnesota Twins are 2 games under 500, which makes them sound like a 500 team. They've been anything but a 500 team this year. They started out the season 7-15, to the point where I really thought Rocco Baldelli's job was in danger. Um, and I think Vegas agreed. I think if you take a look at the boards, there were plenty of high bets suggesting that he would be the first manager or one of the first managers fired. Then at one point they went on a 13-game win streak, and then they had a streak sometime middle of May towards beginning of July, where I think they played 11 series and lost 9 of them, tied 1 and won 1, and that one was versus the Athletics. So, this has been a team that has been both hot and cold. And then, by the way, they went into the All-Star break winning 3 straight series at home, and all 3 of those series they had a chance to sweep in the third game and didn't. The biggest problem with the Twins has been their hitting. They had 4 kind of cornerstones for their offense. Those 4 cornerstones were supposed to be Buxton, Correa, Royce Lewis, and Matt Wallner. And 3 of those 4 have not performed and come nowhere near their projections. The rest, Buxton has been unbelievable. A season that we have been waiting probably 15 years for. And it's fantastic to see. Everybody's thrilled by it. But Correa has hit, and while he's hitting for some average, he's got no power whatsoever. Royce Lewis has just been absolutely lost, barely cleared the Mendoza line recently. Matt Wallner was very good in April and just hasn't done anything since he came back from a strained hamstring. Ever since, he's basically late career Joey Gallo at this point for the last 2-3 months. In the meantime, so as a result, the Twins, I think, rank something like 10th overall in the American League in runs per game. The pitching staff, the team ERA is 10th overall in the American League right now, which suggests that it's amazing this team is named place close to 500. But taking a look at how that starting rotation is done, the starting rotation's ERA has been was something around 3 in April, 3 in May, 3 in July, and 6 in June. And part of that was because they lost Pablo Lopez. Bailey Ober has been working his way through a hip injury, trying to pitch his way through a hip injury until they finally took him out of it. Promising rookie Zebby Matthews has also been missing for a while. And so the depth of the Twins pitching staff, which is really one of their strengths, we thought they were 8 deep in a pitching staff, is to the point where now they're relying on Travis Adams, who's 9th overall on that pitching in that rotation, and being limited to something like 60 to 80 pitches per outing, even in the minor leagues, to try and develop his stuff. So the pitching staff has been, but it does look like it's going to get healthier. Zebby Matthews should be back after the All-Star break. I wouldn't be shocked if we see Bailey Ober very close to after that, and Pablo Lopez is supposed to be back in the middle of August. The strength of the team statistically has been their bullpen, and in fact, they have had some bullpen arms that have been really exceptional. John Duran has been every bit as good and even better than he has been in the past. Griffin Jacks has put up fantastic numbers, but has really failed in some high-profile situations, to the point where I think if you take a look overall, he's, in terms of like win probability or that kind of statistic, he's been a real detriment to this club. But he's still somebody that you trust on a pretty regular basis because he gets the job done 9 times out of 10. Brock Stewart has been fantastic. Louis Varland, who moved from starting pitcher to relief, has been absolutely incredible. Danny Coulombe, who they brought in as a left-handed reliever, has been fantastic. So as a result, this team now is sort of playing with a weak offense, a starting pitching that they kind of trust for about 5 innings or 2 times through the order, and the strong bullpen. The formula has become scrap together a couple of runs one way or the other, including running, which this team, Buxton and Castro and Harrison Bader, have really been leaning into. Hope the starting pitching can get you through the order 2 times, get them out of there after the 5th or 6th inning, unless their name is Joe Ryan. and then turn it over to the bullpen for 1 inning apiece from 5 different guys to kind of get you to the finish line. That has worked for the last week and a half, but when the offense continues to struggle, or like in June when the starting pitching falls apart for any period of time at all, that formula sort of falls apart. So that's and yet all that said, they're second place in the AL Central. They're 4 games back of the wild card spot, and it's debatable whether or not they will be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline. I should just throw one last thing in with my last 30 seconds here. The sale of the Twins is still in limbo. They still haven't announced any sort of buyer. There are rumors, and Manfred said something just before the break that it looks like they would be doing that something would be coming soon, but we haven't heard anything since Ishbia dropped out back in March.
Okay, yeah, I noticed Manfred's statement was vague enough
Yeah.
that he wasn't saying anything, but he was clearly giving a pep talk to people who think it's not going to happen. It will happen.
Well, that's what Manfred was saying.
Right.
And I believe I believe Poulet's to be motivated sellers. So I also believe it will happen. But the question is sort of, at what price will it happen?
Right.
Manfred's
Right.
interest is making sure that he can point out how much these things sell for, and making sure that the market price for them is closer to 1.7 billion than 1.5 billion. And I think that's primarily what he was trying to accomplish.
Yeah, Manfred's under a lot of pressure now to push up MLB franchise values, given the way the NBA franchise values have skyrocketed.
Fair point.
And that, I think, could make or break his commissionership. Okay, so good work on the Twins, and we have the Guardians.
Oh, you flatter me. Theoretically, we could have gone with the Guardians or the Royals at this point, but I will happily take this on. The Guardians are 46 and 49. They went into the break with winning 6 of their last 7, taking 3 of 4 from the White Sox, and a surprising sweep of the Astros in Houston. And I say surprising because it was immediately preceded by a 10-game losing streak, which has laid bare the team's fundamental flaw, which is that they can't hit water if they fell out of a boat. Stephen Kwan continues to do his thing. He had a nice slap hit that actually tied up the All-Star game, which is how we all learned about the new format. Jose Ramirez is still doing Jose Ramirez things. He was voted as a starter of the All-Star game, but he opted out of that to recover. He's been dealing with a couple other things. Bo Naylor has shown some power. Manzardo has shown some power. But other than that, you've got a bunch of guys in the lineup that can't hit their weight. There are lots of fans who are waiting for the arrival of CJ Kefas and specifically Chase DeLauter. DeLauter's tearing the cover off the ball, but it sounds like he's having some kind of wrist issues right now. I'm sure it's just coincidence that there are always rumors on things like this, that they're trying to manipulate his service time. But the pitching actually has held up surprisingly well. They got a couple of really good outings out of Luis Ortiz. Unfortunately, they got a couple of really bad pitches to start a couple of innings, which has attracted the interest of Major League Baseball. He was actually a decent trade. Now he's suspended, and they are investigating whether he threw those pitches so somebody could win prop bets, which is just another day in Cleveland. But they don't have, the pitching is held up reasonably well, like I said. Shane Bieber is still on the mend from Tommy John surgery. They thought he was going to come back by now, but again, he was having some arm issues in his recovery. He is throwing in Arizona. Theoretically, he's going to end up at one of the team's minor league affiliates before too long. Probably do a couple of rehab starts and hopefully be back with the team before too long. There are all kinds of rumors flying around, and everybody's trying to tamp them down as best they can when it comes to trade talk. They are wondering, nobody sees a scenario where the Guardians are really buyers at the deadline, but, I'm not sure who they're going to unload. One name I've heard is Emmanuel Clase. They've tamped that down pretty well. Can't quite say the same about Carlos Santana, because it sounds like he will probably be dealt. And God help me, there are people who are actually talking about the possibility that Stephen Kwan will be traded at the deadline. If that is the case, I think you're going to see a lot of irate fans, and quite honestly, I can't blame them. That appears to be all that I can think of right now. There you go.
Okay, thanks, Vince. Yeah, I've been curious about Class A. He was so unbeatable last year until October, and he didn't start off well this year. Was there some physical thing they
That actually sounds like it might have been It sounds like it actually might have been some sort of arm and elbow trouble, because it seems like, he had a dodgy couple of first starts, but it seems like he kind of got, a little more back on track. Not that we have to worry about a whole lot of save situations, because, like I said, the Guardians have been barely treading water. Then, of course, they had the 10-game losing streak. They are now 4.5 games out of the wild card, and it looks like there are 5 teams ahead of them for that last wild card spot. So it seems like, obviously, never say never. Somebody pointed out to me that the Guardians' record is comparable to what the Tigers' record was at this time last year, and they obviously went and got hot. I'm not sure that I have the same confidence that the Guardians would be able to do so, but it's a nice thought to have.
Yeah. Well, I ever count the Guardians out. So, okay, thanks. So Roger, you ready to go?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thanks. Take it away.
Well, for the Royals, it's been a kind of a very interesting season. Our pitching has been fantastic. Second in the American League in ERA, one of the major league leaders in saves with Carlos Estevez. The emergence of Noah Cameron, a kid from St. Joseph, Missouri, who has sort of eased the injury that's happened to Cole Reagans. But like a lot of teams, it's the hitting. Fifth lowest in the major leagues in OPS plus. We are 15th in the majors in home runs. We may set a record for the least amount of runs scored in Royals history. So the question is, will the Royals be sellers or buyers at the trade deadline? CBS Sports has practically said that Seth Lugo is going to the Cubs for prospects. We sent probably our number one major league ready minor league prospect, Cam Devaney, yesterday to the Pirates for Adam Frazier. Don't think that'll be enough, but we will see. Jack Caglione, who was the number one draft choice in 2024, has looked like he may not be ready yet.
Roger, your audio's going out.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now,
Yeah,
Gary?
we can hear you again.
Okay. I had someone try to call me. So the question is, will the Royals be buyers or sellers? 47 and 50. We're still in with the other teams in the American League, it looks like, for the wild card spot. And the question is, will the Royals go all in or decide to shuck it for the season? Off the field, the stadium talks are still controversial. They still have not figured out a location. And in another off the field incident, former Royals great Frank White is battling a recall election in Jackson County as county executive. In fact, he vetoed a recall election which was to have been at the end of August, which would have been a 60-day deadline from the time that they got over 45,000 signatures for him. He's trying to pick the vote in for November, and that's it from the Royals.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay.
I'm really curious how the stadium thing is going to develop. When I was in KC, let's see, it was summer of 23, because I had to go to Jefferson City for a family wedding. We took a couple days in KC. I couldn't believe all the sites that were still considered in play then and all the sites that had been talked about. It was really amazing. And I thought the downtown site, the one on the south side of downtown, was finally going to be it. And now that's not it either. But what do you think, Roger, are the chances they're going to go to Kansas?
I think they'll be more interested in the Chiefs, to be honest.
Okay. All right.
I think
Um,
that I think it'll go both, but it just depends with the state legislators. State of Missouri has initiated a large group of money, um, despite the St. Louis backlash. So we'll see.
okay.
The question about the downtown site is the footprint. We may have a short right field fence, sort of like what they had in Municipal Stadium with the pennant porch back in the 60s when Finley tried to replicate that 296 right field in Yankee Stadium. But we will see.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
thanks.
So it's time for our White Sox report.
Okay. Yeah, this is Richard. I'll give a quick summary here. Here we go. The Sox are, not with your other team still. It's 32 and 65, which is actually a 5-win improvement over where they were at this point last year. But, the historically bad season, but they are on pace to maybe finish with about 10 to 15 more wins than last year, depending on what happens. So they'll probably finish somewhere in the low 50s. And there's noticeable improvements in the team, as minor as they may be, that the pitching actually is a little better than it was at this point last year. And that's remarkable because last year at this point, they had the full contributions of Garrett Crochet, who was spectacular at the time, and Eric Fetty, who was one of the top pitchers in the American League at the first half. And yet, despite that, arguably overall the pitching has been better this year. It's spread out a little more, but it's more stable. The big improvement is that the bullpen is no longer horrible. It's still bad. It's a bad bullpen, but there are, statistically on every measure, there are teams in the AL that are worse with their bullpen than the White Sox are. So, that's progress of itself. And overall league ERA, they're only 0.11 over the league ERA average. So, pitching's improving. The offense has improved a little by about 0.3 of a run. That's not a lot, but it actually gave them enough that run scored rate, they're slightly ahead of the Royals, as I'm sure our Kansas City friends know, and actually not too far behind the Guardians. So they're still a bad offense, but they're not a horrible offense, and it's sort of improvements like that. And similarly, overall for the defense is better. It's still a bad defense, but it's not horrifically bad, and it's better than some other teams' defenses. So the other big feature of the team is just that the team is much younger. That the really important thing happening and what's making this is much more watchable is instead of just a bunch of journeymen, which they still have a few of, you've got a core group of players. There's 12 players on the current roster that can probably be figured to be around for a while. There's like 7 rookies, 4 second-year players. There's 11 players on the roster who are 25 or younger, and it's balanced out between 6 of these are pitchers, 2 are catchers, so the entire catching staff is rookies, and then you got 4 infielders. Where the team is lacking is noticeable lack of power, and that's kind of at the spots you'd expect to see power. There's not really any power coming from the outfield or first base of the DH, so there's still a lot of room for improvement, but it's sort of where the progress needs to be made. And so in summary, the arrow for the White Sox is up. They are still a long way from competing. They will lose over 100 games this year. Probably they'll lose 110 games this year. But it's possible that this streak of 100 lost seasons will stop next year with even a little improvement over the young players. The other big thing going on is with the ownership situation that the Justin Ishbia he's a minority owner of the White Sox, and he's been tagged as the successor to Jerry Reinsdorf. And this has come out in the last couple of months that specifically the plan is that there will be options for he's going to be making capital infusions to the team over the next couple of years, and in return, the Reinsdorf will have the option to sell the controlling interest to Ishbia between 2029 to 2033, and then at 2034, from that point on, Ishbia actually will have the option himself to buy the controlling interest. So Jerry's kind of put his succession plan in place. So this is long term. I mean, short term, I don't think Ishbia is going to be investing anything in the roster short term or anything like that. The only place this really may make an impact is with a possible new ballpark that he might be willing to help out with investing in if they're going to try to build something in the area known as the 78. And that's what's worth watching. So that's what's going on with the White Sox.
Good. All good reports. I'm very appreciative. Richard, is that the site you just mentioned? Is that the one on the Chicago River? On
Yeah,
the
that's
south side?
the south side of Chicago River. It's huge. The Chicago Fire, the soccer team, announced, and they're just going to do it themselves. They're going to build a stadium there. But by no means does their building a stadium there, outside of they might get the choicest part of land, that does not prevent the White Sox from still going in there themselves. It's a huge piece of property that's just been vacant for God, close to 100 years, maybe 80, 90 years just of not doing anything on, the South Loop. So, so we'll, I mean, I don't know if public money's coming. I'm convinced that would just be for building up stuff like the infrastructure and, getting transportation there and doing things like that. That, the White Sox would need to front a lot more money than they've been willing to do so, so far. But Ishbia may be able to do it. And as people, as at least I think the Minnesota people know, for a long time, Ishbia was the one rumored to be buying the Twins, and then that it got backed off of that, and so now it's expected he'll eventually take over the White Sox. So
Yeah, I was surprised that he agreed to a deal where he couldn't force a sale until 2034, but I guess he figures that Reinsdorf's not liable to live that long, or
yeah,
he may just decide he doesn't want to do it anymore, and
hmm
so that it's not really going to be 2034 before he takes over.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I
okay.
mean, I get when I saw that whole arrangement, my suspicion was the way it's designed. It's Reinsdorf wants to step down. He'll step down between 20. That it's designed that he's going to step down between 2029 and 2034. That he's just gonna every year he'll look at it and like, okay, now it's time, and then he'll offer to Ishbia and say, okay, it's time. Let's do it now. But he wants to see how much energy he has because he doesn't have anything else he's working on. So this is his life right now. So
Yeah. Okay.
it's
All right. Thanks. So we're going to open it up to freewheeling conversation. I see two hands out there. I'm not sure who raised their hand first because I don't know how it works, but I see Mr. Thornley or Mr. Biggins is in the upper left corner of my monitor. So I'm going to give him first, and then Dixie, you go next.
Yeah, my question would be for John, but maybe the others. I say John because I know he's very analytical and he's probably looking at some of the same things I am. Clay Davenport's third order record, which is based first order is the Pythagorean theorem, named after its founder, Bob Theorem, and it projects an expected winning percentage based on the ratio of runs scored to allowed. And then the second and third orders get into strength of hitting and pitching the team has faced and teams in general. No surprise to me that Detroit's a little under. It's a third order record would call for 56 instead of 59 wins. Not a surprise because they're playing at pretty extreme level. It's the Twins and Royals that are pretty close. And then the big drop off after that is Cleveland, which is about 8. Its third order record is about 8 wins short of what they have, which may mean they're overperforming, but that means they probably won't continue to do that. John, or any of the others, do you see that as kind of a good predictor for what might be happening for the rest of the season?
I guess I would suggest it doesn't surprise me too much that that's a little bit more optimistic, but ultimately, I'm not sure that's what the Twins are going to be relying. I don't know that that's a key data point for that. They're trying to decide whether or not they are going to be bouncing back or trying to buy or sell during this offseason or during this trade deadline. I mean, I I think we know that they are optimistic about their pitching coming back to form. They are optimistic about Pablo Lopez coming back middle of August. They're optimistic about Zebby Matthews. They seem to be somewhat optimistic about Bailey Ober getting back into form with back from the hip chronic hip problem that he seems to be battling this season. But ultimately, I think really what it comes down to is, do they believe that Correa, Lewis, and to lesser extent Wallner are as bad as they've been? Or do they believe that they're going to see them bounce back for the last 2 months of the season? Or is there something that's holding them back? If those couple of folks return anywhere close to form, this offense goes from 10th in the American League to 6th in the American League, and you've got a much different team. But right now you've got those three batting 8th and 6th and 5th in the lineup when they're supposed to be 2, 3, 4, 5. So I kind of think that's sort of the fulcrum point in my mind that they're going to try and decide. And so the third order stuff. I mean, I'm sure they're looking at that stuff, but I don't know if that's a key data point for them.
I
Okay,
feel
Tom.
like last year, most Guardians fans, if they were really honest with themselves, knew that the team caught a lot of breaks in the right direction. So, I feel like there were quite a few fans who realized that the regression to the mean was possible. I'm not sure that anybody thought that things were going to turn out the way they were, but this is a team that did not do anything to get markedly better in the offseason, and we are, still somewhat surprised that they aren't as good as they were last year.
Okay. Dixie?
Yes, hello, gentlemen. Good evening. I am speaking to you from 1 mile from Fenway Park, and you can imagine the fantasies that are rolling through everyone's heads here as they are on a 10-game winning streak. But make no mistake about it, Red Sox fans are not connected to any kind of reality in terms of they are coming up against 4 teams in the next 2 weeks that are in first place. So we will find out how good they are. My question is also for John. One of 2 questions. John, do you wake up every morning praying that Byron Buxton's health is as good today as it was yesterday?
Always, but that's been the case for 15 years. We're always trying to give him the benefit of some health. I will say this: we have some hope in that there is a narrative there that is, he had that knee surgery, which was a little bit out of normal type of knee surgery back in before the 2024 season. And having seen him at spring training and talked to him at spring training there, the across the board on the beat writers, the answer was, my God, like how much pain must he have been in? Because he's just so happy. Like, he's just so happy. And that was a year and a half ago. And basically we've seen him healthy up and other than, a hamstring strain or something towards the end of last season, running into Correa to, for a 7-day concussion stay. But they may have finally figured out what the hell was wrong with him back at the beginning of 2024, because we've now got about a year and a half's worth of track record. And I say that knocking on wood, because God, I like watching this guy the way he is. And boy, is it hard to watch him when he's clearly in pain playing baseball.
My second question is for the host. In your talk with Dan Evans, was there any spark that might lead you to believe that someone could talk SABR into finally bringing the SABR convention to Detroit, as I suggested 2 years ago at the SABR breakfast in Chicago?
Well, I'm probably responsible for it not coming here the last few years because I've admitted that our chapter is not doing great. Mitch, I see Mitch is on here if he's still here. He can tell you how hard we've had, harder time we've had getting people to meetings, and even our virtual meetings, which started out gangbusters. Even before Zoom, we were doing book clubs via free conference call, have petered out. It's also that I am not confident how much the Tigers will provide. Sabre has become spoiled now, and that's not a criticism because the Twins were so gracious and cooperative a year ago in providing speakers and content and catering to Sabre. And they said in Dallas, um, Scott Bush said in Dallas that he didn't think anyone could do better than that or unlikely, and the Rangers exceeded that. If anyone was in Dallas, it was amazing the amount of stuff the Rangers provided. John Blake, senior VP for communications or whatever, the former head of PR, just went out of his way to accommodate everything Sabre wanted. We had a hitters panel with Hall of Famer Ivan Rodriguez on it. We had a pitchers panel with Fergie Jenkins, another Hall of Famer on it. We had the, I guess Chris Young is the president of baseball operations, right? He's not a GM. He gave a welcoming address. We had Bruce Bochy, who received the Roland Heeman Award. And if you get a chance to, I understand there's audio of Bochy's speech, not video. If you get a chance to listen to it, listen to it. It is the single greatest speech I've heard by a former player ever made. It just was so warm and friendly and humble. And I've heard lots of guys give good talks and a lot of old timer, particularly the scouts and the coaches, the guys who weren't stars. But this was just astonishing. I was sitting in the back of the room, just shaking my head at how good he was. Um, we, of course, the only complaint was we didn't get a good ballpark tour, and I've forgotten the reasons because I didn't go on it. So Sabre's going to be looking for how much the team can provide. And the Tigers at the Malloy conference 2 years ago, they did some stuff for us, but then there's other stuff they pledged to do and they didn't do it. Um, I don't know how much cooperation you get. In addition, there had been a hotel issue in Detroit. There weren't many hotels that could take a Sabre convention. That's somewhat ameliorated now. There's a new JW Marriott going up right on the river that will provide another convention class hotel. There are lots of boutique hotels. They've made the light rail downtown from downtown to midtown and to the new center. That's free permanently, which was a big boost during the Malloy because we did not have the Malloy at the hotel. Um, so I think it's possible, but it's not going to happen until at least 28. They haven't announced the 27 site yet, have they? Sabre hasn't announced that, have they? No,
They haven't even
rumors,
announced the 26 site yet.
26 site, I'm sorry, right, 26 site, that's what I meant.
Lean toward Cleveland.
Yeah, that's what the rumor was in Dallas, and that's what I heard from several sources. Um, Scott said that they have 2 weekends set aside, 2 consecutive weekends, and unless both of them are without the home team in town, they're going there. So if it is Cleveland, and then in 27, I know they're worried about there potentially being no Major League Baseball. So 28 would be the target. I'd like to believe we could host you all in Detroit. We got really good feedback from the Malloy on 23. Of course, that's only 110, 20 people. It's 1/5 the size of a Sabre convention. Um, but the plan that Lisa Alexander and I cooked up, a multi-site thing, worked really well. We started off at Wayne State. We then the next morning we had our meet and greet at Hamtramck Stadium. We started out the next day at Comerica Park. Then we had the afternoon session on Friday at the Opera House, which is only 2 blocks from Comerica Park and a historic building in its own right. Then we back to Comerica Park that evening for the game. On Saturday, we're at the Detroit Historical Society, which is right next to the Detroit Public Library with the Ernie Harwell collection, and also right next to Wayne State University. And we spent the whole day at the Detroit Historical Society, including having the banquet there. So it worked out really well, and people could take the queue line, the free queue line, 10, 15-minute ride to the hotel. The hotel was amazingly affordable. It was a nice hotel. It wasn't luxurious, but I think we had rates down to 109 at some point, and I think nobody paid more than 129, which is refreshing because obviously, as you know, Sabre conventions have gotten really expensive. So maybe we can work something out there. There's a lot of interesting things in downtown Detroit. Okay.
I don't care what the cost is. I want Detroit.
Well, tell them that. I mean, tell them that and remind me whenever you need something. I can tell you what the realities are or what, the positives and negatives are. I mean, overall, I think it's a good time to be looking at Detroit. The city is doing well. Our mayor is likely to be the next governor of the state of Michigan, which is not gonna hurt us. Um, and I, it's hard for me to tell what's going to happen with the federal government cuts, how that will affect Detroit. But I think we are in a good position. And of course, now, instead of coming in here watching a terrible team, you're going to have a really terrific team to watch, I think, for the next 5 years, both good and interesting, and it won't be a team that is like some Tiger teams in the past, just walk, home run, plodding around the base. This team runs aggressively. They run like a National League team in the 1970s. And of course they're also good defensively. And then there's Tarek Skubal, but I don't
Always
think,
Tarek Skubal.
yeah, well, but I don't think he's going to be here after 26. I don't see how the Tigers are going to sign him. So, okay, John, you had your hand up. You're muted, John.
There we go. Sorry, Mike.
It's okay.
I was muted. My first of maybe two questions is for Vince. I was just I wanted to check back in. We started talking a little bit about the guards bullpen and you know, what's been happening with that. If you wanted to talk about that a little more, I think our Twins maybe have the best bullpen in the division right now, but obviously your Guardians had like a historically good one last year, so I haven't really caught up with them. Have they dropped off at all, or are things just kind of going bad around them?
Well, like I said, the bullpen and really we got more out of our starting pitching than I feel like anybody had any right to expect. When you're looking at Gavin Williams or Tanner Bybee to be a potential ace, you have problems. And the starting pitching, and you saw it in this 10-game losing streak that they went on, which seems counterintuitive, but the pitching held up really well, both the starting pitching and the bullpen. The problem is they couldn't score any runs. I mean, I don't care how bad your bullpen is or how good your bullpen is. If you are averaging 1.5 runs a game, which is what they were averaging in that losing streak, you're not going to win a lot. So that is definitely the most glaring flaw in this team. Obviously the bullpen is still holding up its end. The problem was, and we saw this in the playoffs last year. I feel like you had a bad combination of a really good bullpen, starting pitching that would be kind of shaky, and a first-year manager. So Vogt might have been a little too quick with the hook sometimes. But yeah, the bullpen has been, I don't want to say they've been lights out, but that has not been the issue.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they can only exert so much influence on the game if they're not even getting leads or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll submit. Yield the floor.
Okay, thanks. I don't see any hands up here, so I want to toss out again something about the All-Star game. People want to comment on both A, what they thought of the game, and B, what they thought of the tie-breaking format.
The tie-breaking format, at least they know what they got for what they need for the pitchers. It allows them to try to get every pitcher into the game and not have to worry about it. And I don't know if the American League hadn't come back, it would have been just another bust of a game. And I try not to be like I'm the old fogey that, hey, they're doing things different from when I was a kid, whether it's on how long pitchers go in games in general or anything like that. I don't pay too much attention, but we did, our chapter got together for a viewing party, which we've been doing for a number of years. And you know what? It brings us together. Baseball brings us together. It brings us together here
I thought
tonight.
it
And
was
let's
fun.
celebrate that. Yeah, well, it's been fun even when we haven't even watched the damn game. And I think we started picking up, but it brings us together. So there's that. It's one more way to we had a little bit of a mess because nobody had called to reserve a table, but it worked out. And so if it's something that brings people together for a viewing party and they don't even watch it, but they eat and they drink and they talk baseball, that's a good thing to me.
Yeah, I will say I'm going to get you, Gene. I see your hand. Um, I miss the time when the All-Star game really mattered. We used to have great viewing parties, and it was really exciting because most people knew about the game. This was back in the 80s and cared about it. And then when I moved to Philadelphia in 1990, and I asked my neighbors if they wanted to come over to chance to get to know them and watch the All-Star game, they looked at me like, All-Star game? What's that? You know, now the Phillies weren't very good, but still, I mean, it was completely different. And I miss it being a major event. MLB still calls it a jewel event, but I really think it's a tarnished jewel.
You know,
Gene, you had some-
there
Yeah,
was a time when they had two All-Star games, you know. I mean,
yeah,
now they won't play extra innings. They've gone
right.
from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, although the two All-Star games was an experiment that was not advisable and not popular, even amongst the players who it was designed to benefit.
Well,
Anyway,
I like it.
okay, Gene?
yeah, thanks. I'm almost an old fogey too, but I uh I sort of enjoyed the game because the uniforms were all correct, and they had the automatic ball strike system, which I thought was fun to. I wish teams would be allowed more challenges, maybe like one per inning, because that would, I think, really help some of the bad calls. But I thought it was an improvement, and it did have a nice 6-run comeback. So I think it was pretty good. I don't know what the ratings were, but I would have rated it, up there, enjoyable.
Yeah, I didn't look at the rate, look for the ratings. Does anyone know what the ratings were? Or the viewership was? They don't really count ratings much anymore. It's total viewers.
I don't know if that's come out. Usually it may be tomorrow you hear that. Like today I was hearing the ratings actually for the home run derby on Monday were up.
You know,
So
normally they release preliminary ratings 2 days later. And
Major League Baseball says that the Home Run Derby averaged 5.7 million viewers, peaking at 6.3 million, which is an increase from 2024. The All-Star Game itself averaged 7.2 million viewers, peaking at 8.1.
okay, thanks, Vince. Okay, so we got a bunch of people. Dixie, you have another point to make?
Yes, I think Kyle Schwarber turned a blah game into a fun game just by himself. Uh, the game was pretty good. When they tied it, it was great. When I found out what the extra innings were going to be, really, I didn't think all that much of it. But when I saw the format, I said, okay, we'll go with this. I mean, they Major League Baseball dug this hole on their own. So you have to give it to them that they planned it this way. Nobody thought it was going to be an extra inning game in the seventh inning or the eighth inning for that matter. But Kyle Schwarber turned it into a fun thing. I felt sorry for the guy who missed all his home runs after Schwarber, because Pete Alonso probably would have hit the home run to win the game, and he would have been the most valuable player, which he probably should have been for hitting the 3-run homer to put them out 3-0. But that's the way it goes. But Schwarber made it fun.
Okay. Francis?
I'm just curious, mine more than a comment is a question. Since we're all SABR people and the viewing audience would have been a much wider mixture or variety of people. Well, how do you feel, some of you feel about the constant chatter with the players between the announcing booth and the players? I don't like it myself. I think I know why they do it, because they're playing, in a sense, dumbing down to the audience. But at any rate, does anybody think that's a good idea?
Well, I'll say that I think it might be a good idea in very limited doses, but there was way too much of it.
The best part was Clayton Kershaw. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, he asked John Smoltz what pitch he should throw, I guess.
Yeah, that was great.
And then Smoltz
That was great.
said, "Hey, throw a cutter," and he's like, "I don't have one of those."
No, he's calling for a curveball, you know.
No, I think it's fascinating to see what the players are thinking in action, but I did think they way overdid it. It should be leavening, not a heavy spread. Keith?
To expound on your point, the conversations in the game make me very anxious. Although in the All-Star game, I have no problem with it. I hate when they do it in a meaningful game. I don't remember who commented. I guess we've had a few comments about how the All-Star game that has been tarnished in the last, couple of decades. That's really true in every sport. I mean, the NBA All-Star game
Is a joke.
And the players don't like it. No one seems to like it. The NHL All-Star game is not quite as bad as that, but is that way. The Pro Bowl, NFL Pro Bowl, they basically don't play a game anymore. So I think the fact that these All-Star games are not a big thing like they might have been in the past has to do with the fact that we can see these players play all the time now, interleague play, all of those things has just led to kind of a less importance for all these All-Star games. To be honest, I think the baseball All-Star game is still kind of viewed as the best one. In regard to the home run derby or whatever they called it at the end, as someone who hates the zombie runner and rules like that, I actually like this for the All-Star game. This is the perfect place to do something like that, because we don't want it going extra innings and have pitchers pitch more than what we would want them to in an All-Star game. But for something like the All-Star game, I'm okay with it. I think it's kind of appropriate, although I do agree it seemed to take forever for it to get started. I think that might have been because they didn't even know which three batters were going to hit, because some of them, Aaron Judge, you would think would have batted for the American League. I'm sure at that point he had showered and gotten into regular clothes. Who knows? He might not have even been at the stadium anymore.
Yeah, I think it's
He
certainly
definitely wasn't. He and Ohtani were both long gone, I heard.
It's certainly true the MLB All-Star Game is the premier one. It always has been. But in my view, baseball is fighting for relevance against the NBA and the NFL. And if it has an advantage in that its All-Star game is relevant where the others are either ignorable or jokes, it needs to keep that advantage. It doesn't need to say, well, all the other All-Star games suck, so ours can suck too. I mean, but to be fair, I mean the death certificate for the All-Star game was signed the day they started interleague play, because that's what made the All-Star game special. Was one, you didn't get to see the players from the other league unless you're in a two-team city, And two, the players in the American League really didn't like the players in the National League and vice versa. And essentially unlimited fraternization and seeing these players from the other league all the time, it's just made it not special at all. So, um, anybody else with a comment here? I see a deficit of hands.
Well, this is where I remind you that baseball and football appear to be going neck and neck for the oldest fans on average in the NBA. To your point, has the youngest fans on average. So, there's definitely something to that.
And the talking during the play is purely a play towards the younger generation. And the reason why is because those clips can be played all the time on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, on everything. Though the reason those exist, I mean, it's only partially because they find it entertaining during the game. It's because they're hoping to find something that they can use in bite-sized segments for a 1-minute video that will be seen by 30 million people, which is far more than anybody who was sticking around to watch the All-Star game.
Yeah, well, maybe they could allow outfielders to have their phones and be posting on social media during the game. Or at least, I mean, to be fair, the right fielder could post when there's a right-handed pull hitter up. The left fielder could post when there's a left-handed pull hitter up. When there's a dead fly ball hitter, you let one of the infielders have their, post. And they could all have their phones in their back pockets like they used to always have a can of snuff. Anyway, Francis?
I'm waiting for a right fielder to be interviewed and then a ball go through his legs as he's distracted by the interview.
Well, I surely wouldn't want to be trying to be mic'd up if I were on the field, but these guys are professionals, and you could see that, like Pete Crow Armstrong was moving around and adjusting to the pitch and the hitter, even while he's jabbering away. I mean, I wouldn't put it past someone to be, if they get a 1/10 of a second slower jump on a ball, it could make a difference. But it's an exhibition game, and
Yeah.
basically, not many people on the field care much about who wins or who loses. At least I don't see it. So, okay.
I do have a question, and I'll throw it out to anybody here. What, generally speaking, is the attitude of the rank and file of major leaguers in terms of actually going, as time has gone on, and the All-Star game has evolved in the way that we've all heard and what you've described? What's the rank and file of the major leaguers feel in terms of going to the All-Star game, also in terms of the risks associated with playing an exhibition game in terms of getting injured, particularly if they played a 10th inning, which is probably one reason why they don't. But, what's the attitude about the level of enthusiasm or lack thereof by the players in terms of actually, going to the All-Star game and the whole hoopla around it?
Someone want to volunteer that? Because I haven't paid any attention to player comments and I'm not in the clubhouse.
My sense
talking to the
is,
players.
Liz, you're certainly seeing more players opt out of it for whatever reason than they were back in the distant past. But I still think that's the exception to the rule, not the rule.
No, I would agree. Yeah.
Players, Joe Ryan wanted to be in that All-Star game really bad. And when he was left out in the initial pass, he was stomping around. I don't want to say stomping around the clubhouse, but he was talking to people in the clubhouse about what he needed to do to be able to get in that All-Star game. So I think most of them view it as the honor, which it is supposed to be. I think a lot of them, Buxton talked openly about this, about how much and Correa has too, talked openly about how much it means for them to be able to go because they want to bring their kids or they want to bring their family, and they want their kids. They like that their kids might be a little bit older and able to remember that sort of thing. I think the pomp and circumstance, whether it's the red carpet and such, does play up on that a little bit. So while I think it's viewed as to some extent, a little bit of a pain for, some of the people who have done it over and over and over again, or for those people that might feel like they need a break. They need those 4 days off. And I mean, I think there are major leaguers that are like that. I still think that is the exception to the rule, that the vast majority of them would throw themselves down a flight of stairs to get an all-star game bid, and to be able to go and attend, and have the responsibility of attending all of the events associated with it.
Yeah, it's definitely true that the players are more family oriented.
Yeah.
They don't look at like an all-star game junket as a chance to visit the public establishment with the red lights and the flocked wallpaper, or to just get drunk and find an Annie to go back to the hotel with. The way that baseball, which used to be this culture of feral men drinking to excess and having a girlfriend in every city, not all of them, of course, to a culture of really family-centric men is a very gratifying and wholesome change, I think. And you see that at the All-Star game. Um, so, well, have we chewed on the All-Star game enough? Because
There was actually, to your other point, there was a story in the Athletic about hockey players, but I think it holds true for baseball as well. And they actually said that players now, they are content to go up to their rooms, order pizza, and play video games. Some of them bring their video game consoles actually with them on the road.
yeah, they're playing. What are they playing though? Are they playing Madden or are they playing MLB The Show?
Good question.
Yeah, probably Call of Duty or some other game that I don't know. I'm not familiar with. Um, if we've exhausted the All-Star game, I would like to throw something out about 27. There was a piece, Barry Svrluga in the Washington Post the other day about 27A not being far away, it's just around the corner, and B, how the teams are already planning for it. And that's not just planning like for contingency plan, they're already planning for a long stoppage.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see how people feel about whether there's going to be a long stoppage during the season. I mean, in the off season, I think a lot of fans don't care as long as the games aren't scrubbed. And of course, everyone knows spring training is too long, so truncating spring training is not an issue unless you're a snowbird who bought tickets for the games that are going to be canceled. Um, but I do think a work stoppage that costs regular season games is a real problem for the sport.
Yeah.
I mean, you said that spring training was too long. As somebody who froze his ass off at the home opener in Cleveland, I mean, I would not be averse to a season that started in the middle of April.
Well,
I think
yeah,
if
they
you
could
take a
do
look
that.
at I think if you take a look at a lot of the contracts, long-term contracts that were signed this offseason, it suggests that a lot of people are starting to say what you or think the same way you are, that there's going to be a work stoppage. They want to get their contracts locked in before the CBA gets renegotiated. You saw a lot of young players sign long-term deals this spring.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it comes down to the salary cap. That seems to be the big sticking point of everybody is owners want a salary cap, obviously, and the players don't want anything to do with it. And they're going to have to find some medium ground between the two to figure all that out. And I think that's the big issue.
Oh, absolutely. I think, but my fear is it's going to be a rerun in 94, 95, except it'll happen at the start of the season, not in August.
Yeah.
That this is
True.
going to be the owners are going to insist on a salary cap, players are going to resist, and the real question is how strong is a union, and is Manfred's attempt to go directly to the players and go over Tony Clark's head going to work? In 94, 93, 94, the owners thought they could do that, and malcontents and jerk offs like Lenny Dykstra would give them some hope that they could go directly to the players, or that players would cross the picket line or mouth off and force the union to capitulate, and it didn't work then. I don't know if it could work now or not.
Well, Gary, isn't another issue with this strike that, like, yeah, it's owners versus players, but actually there's something else going on where it's not just owners versus players. It's big market owners versus like not big market owners versus whatever. It's like that's the real dimension going on where you've got this fight of, somebody like the Dodgers who just, seem to be printing money and can like kind of vastly overpay for players, and other teams that want a limit on that.
Well,
And that's like, that's not just the players. There's like this other dimension there that's going
yeah.
on.
Yeah, well, I would argue all the teams are printing money. You look at the franchise values. The Dodgers and the Yankees and the Cubs are printing $100 a bill, $100 bills, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Tigers and some of the mid-market clubs are printing $50 bills, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and some of the smaller market clubs are printing $20 bills.
Mhm.
But Rich, to go to your point, in '94, it was exactly the same dimension. The I'm just going to call them small market owners because there's not a rigid hierarchy, and people will call a club that's successful and rich a large market team, even if it's not. But I'll
Mhm.
just say that the small market teams in '93, '94 threatened to upset the apple cart if they didn't get something like revenue sharing, by withholding their consent to broadcast their games. So if
Mhm.
the Royals withheld their consent to for the Yankees to broadcast games in Kansas City or games in New York against the Royals, the Yankees couldn't broadcast them.
Yeah.
And the solution of the pseudo commissioner, I mean, Silly was not technically commissioner then, and Reinsdorf was right at his elbow. The solution was to solve that bifurcation in the owner ranks. They actually had caucuses, owners caucusing separately in Kohler, Wisconsin, in the owners meeting that really set the stage for the strike. They had the small market owners caucusing in one place. I can't remember in the same building or not. And the rich teams caucusing in another place, and a few owners going back and forth trying to broker a deal. And so the solution was to the um, rich clubs agreed to provide revenue sharing to the less well-off clubs, provided that they got that money back via a salary cap. So
Mhm.
essentially, the players would be paying for the revenue sharing that the clubs like Pittsburgh and Kansas City wanted. And of course, it didn't work out so well. And I suspect that's what's going to happen again, that the commissioner is going to be telling the players they're better off. But what it really will be is the owners are trying to either get out from under the burden of these huge revenue sharing checks are right into clubs like the Pirates and the Marlins and the Rockies, who aren't trying to compete, and save the money on the salary cap.
Mhm.
And that, to your point, I mean, I feel like the only way the idea of a salary cap gets any kind of traction with the players' union is if there's discussion of a salary floor as well. That there is an idea of some kind of minimum payroll that you have to maintain, because, this has been one of the ongoing complaints about the Guardians. And, I'm not going to say that it is completely accurate, but the fact is, they are not spending money on free agents for any reason whatsoever. Paul Dolan was famously asked about Francisco Lindor, and he says the only way that we're going to start paying players $300 million is if somebody else signs a $1 billion contract. So, I mean, they are not interested in spending money, and they are able to kind of walk that line. But I know that there are lots of other teams that can't, or frankly aren't interested to do so. And I know that's one of the complaints. I seem to recall George Steinbrenner saying, I will happily pay the luxury tax because of what we're doing, but I want to see it spent on other players, not going into the owner's pockets.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
similarly to the point that you made about large market versus small market owners. That's the sort of issue that divides the players side, right? On the you've got the the high impact free agents who are, close to their agents. They don't want a salary cap, right?
Mhm.
But the rank and file is a lot more interested in a salary floor. They've seen what it's done in things like the NBA or the NFL, where suddenly mid-market free agents are, people who have, lasted a few more years are able to get are not getting squeezed out of the market quite as much. And
Yeah.
so that's where, you've got a similar conflict over on the player side between high value players and mid market players that you have to over on the owner side with big markets and small markets.
Yeah, I will say that the union has philosophically been opposed to a salary floor as well as a salary cap, I think for two reasons. One is because they have said they want to promote competition, and I believe they do, and that if you don't allow teams to save money when they're rebuilding and force them to spend money uselessly on higher salaries or players that aren't going to win, that it's going to take them longer to rebuild and go return to competitiveness. And two is they view a salary floor as, even if it isn't originally going to be linked to a salary cap, it will be shortly. And I don't know if they can maintain that. It depends on what the sentiment of the players are. I mean, the union, despite the fact that people think that the MLBPA is led by an elite group of executives and a small cabal of players who are very active, because they're the ones you see. I think the MLBPA is the most democratic union in the country. And so it will really depend on what the sentiment of the players are. And the union officials know what the sentiment is. They talk to the players all the time. I don't know what the sentiment of the players is. They do. Of course, there are a lot of wild cards here. Tony Clark could be under indictment. He's had to hire his own attorney separate from the union in this one team thing. Of course, the head of the NFLPA has hired his own attorney, and he has not been. There's not been alleged that he has done anything improper. I have no way to handicap that, and no way to know what really is going on, and if anything untoward is. You also have the fact that the players are richer than ever, and therefore people think they're willing to um, settle more on the owner's terms, and that's been true literally almost forever. I mean, since collusion, it's been true for most of the years, not all. Um, but it also is true the players have been very united and very disciplined and very well led by and large. Not always. People think the union went on a 30-year or 35-year winning streak, but it's not true. After collusion, they gave back or settled for in the middle positions many times. They were defending the status quo essentially. And that's different than trying to win the negotiations. So I'm just not optimistic. I don't want to see another 94, 95 nuclear war. It took many years for baseball to come back from that, and this one would be equally as devastating, I believe.
Yeah.
So what else? It's open mic night. Anyone got a comedy routine they want to try out?
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
Gene.
no, I don't have a comedy, but I noticed that Detroit is third in the American League in runs scored, which surprised me when I looked at all the team stats. And of course, the Yankees are first, but it seems like you don't think of Detroit as, unless you follow them every day, you don't think of them as being a big run scoring team, but they've dwarfed teams like, Cleveland and the Twins with scoring runs. And so is it the reason why you said just a lot of athletic players, a lot of running, consistent, production from from power hitters, or will that fall back down to a lower than great level for the second half?
Yeah, well, I've already been accused in this forum of being overly optimistic or whatever the phrase was, but that's all right. I have to tell you that I always look for the potential problems, and I see the Tigers being able to surmount them. their offense is in some ways playing over its head. You look at their rankings in on base and slugging, and they're producing more runs than they should. And I think that's two things. One is I think it's their aggressive running. And two is that they have the ability to get matchups at the right point. They're a genius.
Yeah.
AJ Hinch is sort of like Earl Weaver. He's a genius at getting the right matchup at the right time in the game. Or like Tony La Russa was in the late 80s and early 90s with the bullpen, getting the right bullpen matchup. And Scott Harris is giving him that raw material, in particular by mining diamonds like Zach McKinstry out of a hill of dirt. They, it's astonishing. I mean, partly it's astonishing because you didn't really want to believe after 10 years in the wilderness and after the Dave Dombrowski, my checkbook is bigger than yours, kind of GM um, reign. I didn't really think they could transfer so quickly to a smart, hungry, analytical club, and they just did it almost instantly. It's hard to imagine it's not even been 3 years since they hired Scott Harris.
So the Twins are like behind 5 teams for the wild card, and they're tied with, I think, Kansas City and the Angels. So I mean, there's a big bunch of mediocre teams right there, and I'm not sure whether one can jump in and make a wild card slot. In addition to the good teams like in the AL East, there's a couple of three good teams there. So I don't know. Does anyone feel like one of their Central Division teams can contend for a wild card this year? Maybe the Twins if they hit the ball.
I think right now the Twins percentage on, most statistical things are something like 25% of making the postseason, which means a 75% chance of not.
Right.
Does that mean that they're going to sell? I mean, that is an interesting scenario. Like how many of the teams that you're talking about, Rangers, Angels, Twins, Guardians, Royals, end up becoming sellers? Right now, in the most recent era, we haven't had, 5 or 6 teams in one league all decide to sell. The wild card was too approachable, right? There's usually like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 teams that are selling and everybody else is buying, and it becomes a real seller's market. What happens if, in this game of chicken, 5 or 6 or 7 teams all decide, yeah, you know what, this is not going to be our year. It'll be interesting to see. I think from the Twins standpoint, if they are, around 500, they will take a look at it and say, we'll probably go. But, they come out of the break with 3 games versus the worst team in the NL, the Rockies. And then they go play the Dodgers for 3 games. And then they play the Nationals for 3 games. So, that's the 9 games they have left to evaluate things. We'll have to see where their record is after that roller coaster ride.
Yeah, well, I am not in favor of a big wild card 10, and I certainly don't like the current format. But of course, the previous format was in some ways worse. But I will say it offers this false hope to the fans because all they see is that they're 2 games out of the last wild card spot. They don't think there are 4 other teams they have to leap over to get to that wild card spot. And then even if the front office knows how slim their chances are of earning that wild card spot because of all the teams that are ahead of them, even if they seem close, they can't actually go out and tell the fans. They can't do a kind of white flag trade where the fans think they're only a game and a half from the wild card slot at late July, and they start trading players. You don't want to do that because you'll piss off your fan base, and the White Sox fans know that. Um, so it sort of forces, I think, the front office to be more conservative and not just throw in the towel. And the other thing I would say is, and this is one of the great improvements in baseball in the last 20 years, is that analytics has taught almost every front office and almost every general manager slash president of baseball operations that prospects and draft picks are gold, and overpriced veterans being offered at the trade deadline are fool's gold in most cases, not all, but most. And so you don't see these kinds of idiotic deals where you get what, Larry Anderson for Jeff Bagwell kind of thing, and you don't see them much anymore. I mean, to my mind, that's what kept the Yankees from running away with the league every year for 2 decades, was they insisted on buying overpriced veterans and trading away prospects that
Mhm.
allowed the poorer clubs to keep up with them. And it was that constant movement of high-priced veterans, most of whom were overvalued, to the big markets and the richer clubs that kept some sort of balance in the game. But now,
Yeah.
since everyone knows that's not a good investment of your in the long term, that's
Mhm.
really slacked off, and that's led to a much more rational um, market at the trade deadline. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, and Gary, just as a White Sox fan here, you bring up the white flag trade. I mean,
Yeah,
there is a link between the white flag. Nobody wants to hear it in Chicago, but there is a link between the Sox making the white flag trade in '97 and winning the World Series in 2005. If nothing else, in the process of the white cleaning out with the white flag traded, cleaning out the team, it opened up positions for new opportunities for players, including a pitcher named Matt Karshner, who won the closing job and was doing a real effective job as a closer. And in the following year, the Sox were able to deal him to the Chicago Cubs, who were desperate for bullpen help. And the Cubs gave up a young prospect to get him, a pitching prospect named John Garland.
yeah.
And,
Well,
you know, and without the white flag trade, they never get Garland.
I'm not saying that it was the wrong thing. I'm saying
Yeah.
that the fact that it
But
was
the
dubbed the
fans don't
white
like
flag
it.
trade, it was just a terrible thing. I mean, the clubs have to market to the fans. They can't
Yeah.
always just do what's rational, and balancing how the fans perceive it.
Yeah.
To some extent, how the fools at sports talk radio stations are going to treat it is part of the job. You can't just, you're not just playing Stratomatic, or you're not
Yeah.
just playing, MLB The Show and manipulating things to your best advantage. So,
Well, I with as you were mentioning, with all these teams still, like one of the most interesting factors about the trade deadline is that it if you're going to be a buyer, it's pointless to go out now because the sellers really do have an advantage now because so many teams haven't committed. So like I'm in city not with the White Sox but with the Cubs, who there's a lot of pressure to like, oh, we've got to improve the team, we've got to get our starter, we got to get our bullpen. And it's hard to tell my Cub fan friends that what you want to do is really wait a week or a week and a half when all of a sudden a lot of these teams fully realize, okay, we're not in the hunt, and they're willing to release their players. And all of a sudden, you as a buyer aren't going to have, it's worth it not to have to give up as much because, in 2 weeks, you'll be able to get a quality of player for one prospect, whereas now you may have to pay two prospects for it. It's just common sense that, just wait another week and a half. That'll open up for the buyers. But, it's fans are impatient. So,
yeah, well, fans pay a lot of money these days,
yeah.
a lot of money. And I think, I mean, of course, it's the fans' game. So you can almost say they're always right. Of course, they're not.
Yeah.
But it really is something to worry about if you get a backlash of social media. I mean, it used to be just the sports radio hosts that really determined. Um, they almost manage the club
Mm-hmm.
in some cities, I remember, it could also be true with the legacy media. I remember one time talking to an editor at the LA Times, and he said they were having fun summer. This was back during the McCourt era. They were having a fun summer because it was like whatever they criticized the Dodgers on, the Dodgers would go and try to address, and they felt like they were sort of stage managing the Dodgers.
Oh, good God.
Um, well, the McCourt, uh, maybe the worst owner in the last 40 years,
Yeah.
although it's hard with the Monforts out there to say that. But anyway, it's 9:30 Eastern. I thank all of you for showing up. I want to remind people that when I'm looking down constantly, I'm not looking at my phone. I'm writing notes on here about attendance and things like that for my own benefit, and also to send out a little email to the chapter leaders. I am paying 100% attention here. I will say, Rich, I'm glad you mentioned the Cubs. My wife and I were talking about an hour before the event tonight, and she asked, well, doesn't the Chicago people talk about the Cubs? I said the Cubs are almost never mentioned in our meetings. So you got one mention in right at the end to prove the
Yeah.
point. So, okay. Well, thanks everybody for showing up. I'll look forward to seeing you at the end of the season. And I guess we're out of here. That's a wrap. Thank you
Thank
again.
you for
Thanks,
hosting,
Gary.
Gary.
Thank you. Bye.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye now.
Bye.